WHAV, Merrimack Valley. Open mic.
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, 97.9 WHAV FM presents the new Open Mic Show with Bill Masek. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900.
Good evening and welcome to the new Open Mic Show on WHAV. I'm Bill Masek along with my co-host Bill Ellis.
Good evening, William.
Hi, Bill. And tonight we have special guest Senator Barbara L'Italian and also congressional candidate Barbara L'Italian, who is joining us until I think about 6:45. Then you got to scoot off someplace else, right?
Thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem. And we also would like to have you take any phone calls, right? You would gladly take phone calls?
Sure.
Yeah. 978-374-1900 is the number if you have a question or comment for Senator. I have to call you Senator now, but soon.
Just call me Barbara.
We'll just call you Barbara? Okay.
Barbara works.
All right, Barbara. Okay. And you can call in 978-374-1900. Let Bill and I just do a little bit of housekeeping so we get it out of the way. If somebody would like to call in with a birthday or an anniversary for next month, and so that would be the month of August, you can also call in that same phone number. Chris, our producer, will take the information, and that name will go into a hat. We'll be drawing for a free cake from LBD's second-generation Italian bakery, located right in the Bradford Square on Main Street. So we want to make sure that we get as many entrants as possible, birthdays or anniversaries, in the month of August, because we are now into July. Can you believe this year is just flying by?
It is flying by.
Yeah.
So make sure in
Before
December
you know
you
it-
call, because your birthday's in January, Barbara.
Yes,
And
it is.
You get a 7-inch cake that you get to split with Bill.
All right.
Yeah,
I'd
sure.
have a piece, but I'm on a diet.
Right.
You can see Bill's not on a diet.
Hey. You can't start pointing fingers yet.
That's right.
You
You
haven't
always see the most critical people are people like that stop smoking. They're always critical of other people. Oh, he smokes. It's terrible. It smells terrible. And
I'm not telling
look,
you can eat whatever you want.
I know. I'm trying to lose weight, Bill, because I
My-
want to be more like you when I grow up.
My personal decision whether I ever want to get in the elevator with you. That's all.
It depends on if it's a freight elevator
All right.
at this point, but maybe we'll get into a human elevator.
Ah, jeez. Okay.
In the
All right.
future.
Well, let's talk to our candidate here. Candidate for Congress, looking for the 3rd congressional district in Massachusetts. It's known as the Nikki Tsongas seat,
It is.
and with a little luck, it'll be the Barbara L'Italian seat.
Well, let me say, I guess I'm old enough to remember when it was Paul Cronin's seat
Yeah.
and Jimmy Shannon's seat
Yeah.
and Chet Atkins, and then, of course,
Marty.
Paul
Oh,
Tsongas.
that's right.
He was
So
in the
first
fifth.
it was Paul Tsongas, and then it was Chet Atkins.
and then
Then
went
it
to
was Marty.
Yeah.
Then it was Nikki.
Yeah.
And now it's up for grabs. So
how
I guess
long has
I've lived
Nikki
long
been there?
enough to remember when it's been up this end of the district as well, because it's
Correct.
a lot of people think of it as a Lowell seat, but in my opinion, it's also been held by a couple of folks up here in the Merrimack
Right.
Valley as well.
It
This
has.
end, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So how's it feel? How you've been out campaigning, I'm sure, and trying to be
Yeah.
everywhere.
I mean, we're
every
on
day?
month 12, I think, or close to month 12. August 9th was when Nikki decided to announce her retirement. So since then, I guess we're entering month 12. Since then, it's been, trying to be out and about, meeting people, talking with people, getting their thoughts, sharing some of my ideas, and it's a lot. It's exhausting, but in a very good and productive way. So I think back now to I was walking around Haverhill Fest. That must have been late August, early September.
Yep.
Almost a year ago. So
Yeah.
it's been a lot.
You were early in. I remember that. You were one of the first names, if
well,
not the first.
I think very quickly we said we were looking at it.
Yeah.
And then we officially announced in November because we wanted to really do our homework and see what it entailed. And, and it was to me, it was a very serious decision not to be taken lightly. In running for the seat, I am walking away from the Senate seat. And so it was a very deep dive into what it would take to run, what it would take to win, the contours of the district, and all of that. So we officially jumped in, I guess, in November, but we were doing exploratory for a number of months.
Barbara, in all the time that you've been out with the public, what seems to be like the worst, first or second thing that always seems to come up, the top two items that they want to discuss?
There's some variation depending on where you are, but certainly some of the biggest issues center around folks with concerns about the economy and concerns, and that depends on how old you are, where you live, whether you have a job or whether you're underemployed or unemployed, whether you are nearing retirement and concerned about that. I would say healthcare absolutely comes to the top of every discussion that we have, and also education. I would say those three things. And then I have a lot of people coming forward talking about the environment as well, many more than I would have expected, but a lot of people talking about the environment.
Well, we're going to get a new EPA director at some point.
Yeah.
Right? Yes.
And that probably can't be a bad thing, no matter who it is, because the one that was in there was quite radical.
Yeah, I
And
think
it seemed he used the government's credit card pretty handily, too.
Yeah.
there were about 15 distinct incidents where he was being investigated, and he, survived many of those because he was fulfilling the president's agenda of rolling back a lot of the climate controls, and so he was able to he didn't get knocked out as quickly, let's say, as some of the others who'd done this kind of stuff.
Right.
But eventually, I just think it was too much, and they decided they needed to let him go.
Well, didn't the final straw, he was pushing to get Sessions out, and he wanted to fill that.
That was the rumor, yeah.
Yes.
And I don't understand, why he did what he did. In this day and age, it's really hard to get away with anything anymore. You've got the media looking over
Yeah.
6 shoulders.
Right.
And it just doesn't make sense why anybody would want to stray.
So, Barbara, without getting any information that I shouldn't know, how's it going? Got any poll information? Anything you want to talk about that
Yeah,
makes it look like you are the candidate I think you are?
We've done a couple of polls. I'm aware of numerous other members, Democratic folks doing polls. I believe that Rick Green, who is the Republican, has done some polls. I believe I've led in every one of those polls, every
Not
one of
bad.
those internal polls.
Nice.
And so, it doesn't surprise me, I guess, because I've been both in the House, served and represented Haverhill for 8 years, am now in the Senate. So when you put your name out there, when you've done concrete things on behalf of people, when you have voted for things, people know who you are. And, honestly, although many people want to talk about, what's going on internationally, the truth is most of the work that you do is really constituent services. So if someone is having difficulty because they've been ripped off by a business, or in the case of at the federal level, let's say your Social Security check doesn't come through or something like that, the ability to help someone tangibly solve a problem that's affecting their household and maybe keeping them from having a paycheck coming in. When you help people like that, they never forget it.
Well, and you do have a good, name that's you haven't caught any bad press over the years that I can recall. You've been just kind of in the trenches doing what you're supposed to do.
You fly
and,
coach?
And I mean that in a very positive way.
Right.
So I think that that does stick, and people do remember who you are. As a long-term candidate myself, I think the more you do and the more you work for people, the more they remember. So
Right.
Yeah.
I can literally remember conversations I had with people 16 years ago this summer, knocking on doors here in Haverhill. I can remember going down to Rainbow Drive. I can remember going around, the Rogers Farm. I can remember people that I've spoke with 16 years ago and what we talked about, because when I get on someone's door, I want to have a meaningful conversation with them and connect with them and find out what's on their mind and what they want and need from government.
Right,
Yeah,
absolutely.
you want them to feel like you really take a sincere interest in what they have to say.
Not just feel, you really got to do it.
Absolutely.
You got to walk the
Absolutely.
walk.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I remember a woman that I knocked on her door. I still remember her name. It's Janine, and she was a nurse, and she said, I want to tell you what it's like, working on a nursing floor when there aren't enough nurses, and how scary that is for patients and how challenging it is for nurses. And she was someone from here in Bradford. I remember talking with her. I can remember talking with someone whose child was going through addiction and what that was like. You have these connections with people, and you never forget the
right.
conversations.
You don't.
You may not remember their name, but I can go by a house and say, I talked with someone in that house and I remember what I talked about,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I just think that counts for something, right? We have a very crowded field of 10 people in this race. If you look back a year ago, where many of those people were, a year ago, one of them lived in Denmark, one of them lived in D.C., one of them lived in Boston, one of them lived in North Andover. We've got a lot of people sort of moving into the district to run for this seat that a year ago weren't here, were doing something else. And I would be willing to bet the day after the primary, if they're not successful, they'll be gone again. And so, I think being here, moving here when I was, 6 years old, 1967, living in Andover. My dad's from Lawrence, my mom's from Methuen. I lived up at West Meadow Hill from 1997 to 1987 to 1994. So I lived up there for 7 years. I don't need a GPS to make my way around Haverhill or the Merrimack
district.
Valley.
You know
Yep,
the district.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
When
Yeah.
did you first get the political bug?
Well, I had interned in high school for a guy named Jerry Cohen in the State House when I was 17 years old. So in 1978, I was a high school senior and spent 9 weeks interning for him and thought, this is interesting. Then I had a cousin named Kevin Blanchette, who was the state rep from Lawrence for over 15 years. He first ran fresh out of college in 1978, didn't win. He ran again in 1980 and won, and I helped, friends and family, right? That's how he started, helped on his campaigns. So really was intrigued by all of this stuff, but truly the motivation for me to run and put myself out there was my son, Rudy, my oldest son, 28 years old now. He's on the autism spectrum. And when he was diagnosed at age 5 in 1995, it was a real challenge for my family. He was really struggling on so many levels. He was not doing well in school. He was having all sorts of behavioral issues. He had no friends after school. It was a mess. And I had, 4 little kids and really needed to put something together for him. And so really started putting things together block by block for him and other kids. Support groups at Merrimack College, because I'd gone to school there, and I called up Dick Remming and said, can I have a room to use for a support group, because there was nothing north of Boston. Starting to put my head together with people to form the Asperger's Association New England and to start a school for kids like my son who were out of school.
You
quite
put
frankly.
the first legislation in the state together, I think, for
Yes,
that.
later on, yeah.
Yeah.
So during the 13 years I was home raising my 4 kids, I was doing the mom thing and the local PTO thing, but really a lot of my time, much of my time was spent getting this one oldest child to be able to, get in a good path. And so in the summer of 2002, I found out we had redistricted, and there was this brand new open seat. It was the 18th Essex District, brand new to the Merrimack Valley. We'd had a bump up in population, and part of it included Bradford and West Meadow Hill here in Haverhill, a portion of Methuen, Georgetown, Boxford, North Andover, and a bit of Methuen. And, I didn't know what I didn't know, and I ran for office, and my 8 and 10-year-old daughters at the time went with me door to door all throughout the district. After we would be done, it was an extremely hot summer. After we were done, we would go get an ice cream, and we, and I won, incredibly enough. And then from that, use the time I had in the House and in the Senate to start putting together autism services
Right.
in a formal way for people.
You're like the kid that was never told he couldn't do it or she couldn't do it, so you went out and did it.
Well, it's really funny. So there are guys like Larry Giordano, who I think the world of, who had been a state rep, who could have run and looked at the seat the way it was set up with bits and pieces of 6 communities and said, no, thank you. You know, it was going to be a tremendous amount of work. You know, and I did need to beat out a Democrat to win the primary, and I beat out an independent and a Republican to win in the general. But I mean, nobody told me how much work it was going to be. They just said you're going to go out every day and you're going to knock on doors, you're going to talk to people and try to persuade them to run to vote for you, and
And you
that's
got it
what
done,
I did.
and here you are today.
Yeah, yeah.
Looking for another challenge.
Right.
All right, we're going to take a couple of phone calls, then we're going to take
Sure.
a break, and we'll be right back with Barbara L'Italian right here on the Open Mic Show. Let's go to our phones right now. We got a couple of calls. I think they're birthday calls, right?
This is a birthday call.
Okay, all right. Can we get your name, or the name of the birthday person?
Name of the birthday recipient is Pat.
Pat is the recipient. Okay,
Pat from Haverhill, right?
okay. And anybody else?
No, not yet, anyway.
Okay, thanks for calling in. We're going to move along to our next call. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye. Okay, we're going to caller number 2. Hello, caller. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay, let's, got to bring your volume up. Go ahead. Who's the, what's the name of the,
No, I didn't call in for a birthday. I called in.
oh, you called in? Did you call in to speak to,
Yes.
to Barbara?
Yes, when she mentioned the environment, and then also when she mentioned Merrimack College,
Mm-hmm.
I said, number one, environment, but number two is I'm a graduate of Merrimack College also.
Very good. What year?
52, second graduating class.
52. My uncle Ray L'Italian and my aunt Joan McNaughton graduated right around then.
Yeah, I can remember Ray. Yes, I can remember Ray.
Mm-hmm.
And did you go there also? Didn't you?
I did. I went to Merrimack. I grew up a block from Merrimack College off of Elm Street, and I'm one of 8 kids, and my dad gave everyone a little bit of money and said, you know, here it is, do with it what you may. And so I went to Merrimack, and I was able to get a great education and not have to pay for room and board. I literally walked across the street. Myself and 2 of my older brothers all attended and graduated from Merrimack.
Did you take that Thomistic philosophy, and did you ever determine how many, as they used to say, how many angels can perch on the head of a needle? Those classes in logic and epistemology and things like that.
Jerry, do you have a specific question for Barbara?
Yes, I do.
Sure.
My question is, number one is, Barbara talked about the environment, and I hear Trump talking about, construction and roads and bridges and things like that. But here we are. It was just announced the other day in the Tribune that they're going to enforce that consent decree, which has been hanging around for 5 or 6 years, which would require, the communities along the Merrimack River to clean up their problems with combined sewer overflows and discharges of untreated sewage to the Merrimack, like the episode we had with Greater Lawrence Sanitary District and the Lowell plant. Mm-hmm. Likewise, last year in October. I just want to ask Barbara if she's successful in her candidacy. Would she submit legislation to help fund programs to clean up the Merrimack to a degree as there could be fishing, swimming, and boating, and maybe even also remove contamination to a degree that would open up the clam beds in and around Salisbury and Newburyport.
Yes, so let me tell you that I agree that the Clean Water Act was a really important piece of legislation that was passed at the federal level. However, there's very little money available to help communities that are struggling, as you mentioned, with those consent decrees. If their infrastructure was really old and they didn't have separate water and wastewater, and I see that in the city of Lawrence right now.
Yes.
You're absolutely right that there was a lot of pollution that
And
ran
there
off.
Still is, Barbara. There still is. And
Yes.
Still a lot of work to do. You know, I worked for DEP for 51 years, and I was regional engineer, and I was a director of Division of Water Supply. And I think that the Merrimack River, yes, right after the Clean Water Act was passed, there was tremendous progress. I knew the river when all you had to do look out the experiment station window, and you could see what company was dyeing cloth on that day by the color.
Right.
And then the Clean Water Act came along, and there was significant improvement. But it's still the only really place in the Merrimack that you can swim is at the boathouse
In South Lawrence.
in Lowell, Lowell, and sometimes that has to be closed.
Mm-hmm.
So here we have a major situation, major pollution situation, and I agree that the roads, we've got to build roads and repair bridges and things like that. And unfortunately, you don't cut ribbons when you spend money on the Merrimack River. Yep, but there is really need, and coming from a community that is just about bankrupt, the city of Methuen. I hope your mother's not living there now.
And she's up in heaven.
Oh.
Yeah, but she grew up in Methuen and taught there for a while.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're in really a tough financial situation, but
Right.
again, the river, it's really in need of. The communities are really in need. In fact, Andover, North Andover, Haverhill, Newburyport, Seabrook, Salisbury, Methuen, Lowell, especially because actually Lowell's on a moratorium right now. They can have no more further tie-ins.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that I would hope that if you are successful, that you would at least initiate some kind of legislation. Maybe it won't be passed this time, but maybe in the future it might. We have to clean up our drinking water. Let's face it. More and more communities are going to the Merrimack, for drinking water. Right now.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. So I had co-signed some legislation that Katie O'Connor Ives and a woman named Pat Jalen had filed in the Senate for state legislation to try to look at this issue as well, and for us to be notified when there is intensive rains and runoff, for us to be notified by the Greater Lawrence Sanitary District and any community that is experiencing runoff. But that doesn't solve the money needed to be able to fix it.
Look at how bad Greater Lawrence was. They didn't even have auxiliary power.
That's right. So,
Jerry, Haverhill's spending millions, as I'm sure you're aware, and we're trying to step up, but it's almost impossible, even for us, and we're not in as bad a financial shape as other communities around us. So it's a tough one. It would be nice if the feds would even give us low interest loan money.
Yeah, that's what's needed, is a funding source at the federal level. There's a small amount of money that the state gives out for water remediation, but it's never enough.
No.
And if we're going to step up in terms of what we expect of our communities, we have to fund it.
Yeah. Hey, Jerry, we got to take a break. I hate to stop you here, but we have to take a break, and I thank you for your call. You're always a good caller, and you have great information and questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jerry.
Yep,
Okay.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we're gonna take a pause right now, and we'll be right back. This is Bill Masick along with Bill Ellis and our special guest, Barbara L'Italian. She's a senator now and hoping to be a congresswoman before you know it. Thanks a lot. We'll be back.
Open mic.
Bill Masick and the new Open Mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900. If you're enjoying this program, consider becoming a WHAV member right now. Just click on the membership tab at whav.net.
It's 6:31.
Catch the wave.
Now, here's good news for you Gildersleeve fans.
Yes, folks, this is Gildersleeve. This summer, whether you're at the beach, the mountains, or right in your own backyard,
You'll be able to hear us every Wednesday night at the usual time. We'll be on the air all summer.
Every Wednesday night at 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. on WHAV.
Wave weather.
Here is the wave weather forecast for Haverhill and the Merrimack Valley. The moon and the stars will be shining brightly tonight with clear skies and lows in the middle 60s. A southwest wind around 5 miles per hour. Lots of sunshine for the day on Tuesday. Temperatures warm too, getting to around 93 degrees. Light winds. For Tuesday night, we're looking at an isolated shower or thunderstorm chance mainly late. Temperatures around 68 for the low. An isolated storm possible early Wednesday, then becoming mostly sunny. A high of 80 degrees. I'm WHAV meteorologist Brian Ivy. Your next wave weather in 30 minutes.
This spot could have been yours. Support WHAV's local approach with your underwriting. Go to WHAV.net and click on advertising to reach thousands of new customers.
Catch the wave. WHAV. Open mic.
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, 97.9 WHAV FM presents the new Open Mic Show with Bill Masek. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900.
Back again on the Open Mic Show, Bill Masek and Bill Ellis, and our special guest is State Senator Barbara L'Italian, who's running for the congressional seat that is currently held by Nikki Tsongas. And the election is on a weird day this year. We have to remind people to mark their calendars to get out on September 4th.
September 4th.
Day after Labor
September
Day.
4th, day after Labor Day.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Which means it's going to be a really low turnout election.
Right.
You know, I actually filed something that passed in the in a Senate end of the year supplemental bill to try to allow for early voting for the Monday through Friday prior to, just as we now have in law for general elections in November. And it went to conference committee, and then it didn't make its way out of conference committee. And then in the Senate budget, I was trying to just fund it, but it didn't survive. But I just thought, you know, that it would be the right thing to do to give people that opportunity to go in person Monday through Friday the week before. But that's not going to happen.
Right. I was talking to
unfortunately.
our Haverhill City Clerk, and she mentioned that it wasn't going to happen. And she
Right.
thought that would have at least taken some of the curse of that September 4th date out so that people could get in early. And
Right.
what about absentee ballots? You can do those. though.
Absentee ballots people can do for sure. You know, not as many people are aware of that, but they can absolutely use an absentee ballot if they're going to be away or whatever. I think this week we are going to vote on automatic voter registration, which will make it easier going forward for people to be registered. But we still have a very pitifully low amount of people who participate in the process of voting and choosing, you know, at whatever level it may be,
Right.
going out and voting for people.
It's a scary number, but on the other hand, sometimes I think at least the people that are interested in the candidates and interested in being a active voter go out, and the people that maybe aren't up to speed on who they should vote for or why they should vote, maybe it's best they don't vote. So,
Why do you think it is, though? Why do you think the voter turnout is lethargic?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure why. I don't know if in this speedy age we live in, people going at 100 miles an hour at all times, doing this, doing that, I don't know if they're informed enough, if there's enough information out where they get their news.
Well, is it they're lazy and they don't want to grasp it, or you don't think there's enough information that's out there?
Well, you know what? I haven't researched this. I'm just going off the cuff here, Bill. So maybe Barbara has.
Are you
an
shooting from
opinion.
the
If
lip
not,
again?
We're going to move on. I'm shooting from the lip. Yeah, no. I mean, I just.
You know, there may also be people that feel that their vote doesn't count. But let me
I've heard
tell
that.
you, we had a town
heard that.
election in my hometown, and somebody won by 13 votes.
Yeah,
that's
you had
huge.
some close calls, some
Yeah.
recounts historically in Haverhill that I remember. One vote can
right?
make the difference.
It really can,
Yeah.
particularly in an extremely low turnout election such as this. When I look at, my race, and it certainly won't be the only race on the ballot, you'll have state reps, state senate, all the constitutional officers, governor, treasurer, secretary of state. But in a 10-person race, the
Every
win
vote's gonna
number will
count.
be
Yeah.
very, very low.
'Cause
The
the
win
pie
number
is
will
gonna
be
get
will be
sliced
like
up.
23% may win this race.
Right.
And so that's why I feel it's incumbent upon us to make sure that everyone know that the election is upon us and this is their chance to vote. And I'll tell you something, I passed a bumper sticker yesterday that said, if you don't vote, don't complain.
And
That's true.
And for some of
Yeah.
the races, I
Yeah.
think it's safe to say that who wins in September will go on to victory.
It's guaranteed if
Yeah.
whatever Democrat wins in September is going to win
Right.
in the November. But, when you mentioned 13 votes, all it takes is 7 votes to have changed that election.
Right.
7 votes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
And that night, there were folks that were there expecting that this person was going to win, thinking, "Gee, I could have grabbed my son or my daughter or so and so could have,
Oh, it's gotta be a
done
sickening
an
feeling.
absentee ballot." Yeah, so it's, I think let's just say in terms of Congress, let's not talk about the other races. Nikki Tsongas won a special election 11 years ago and stayed in for all that time. Whoever wins this primary, generally speaking, I agree with you, will win the general election, barring something unforeseen, and has the potential to be in there for a decade.
Yeah. At
So
least,
it's
yeah.
important enough that people really should do their homework and make the decision that works for them.
And come out September 4th.
September
So
4th.
Barbara, when you win, and I'll be on the positive side, do you have aspirations? I only want to be in there 2 terms, 3 terms. Have you ever thought about that in the back of your mind, or are you going to go as long as the good Lord is willing to put you there?
I'll say this right up front. I have no aspirations to go any further up the ladder. I think that, being a congressperson and doing a good job requires a number of years of really putting the time in, getting to know everyone in each city and town. There are 37 of them. So I personally don't want to say that I would limit myself to any particular number of years. I've served in the House, I've served in the Senate, I've been on a school committee, I've worked for the state treasurer. All of those things are, really add to the resume of what I can offer. But personally, I am not in any way interested in going further up the ladder than that. Some people, the second they get to a job, they're immediately trying to think about their next step up the ladder. I would be thrilled and honored to be a congresswoman, but it's, for me, the culmination of 15 years of work. It's really not sort of getting on the ladder and trying to race up the ladder. It would be doing the very serious job that I believe that it is of constituent services, of the work on your committees, helping to identify any and all resources that you can bring back to each of those communities depending on what they need. The gentleman just spoke about desperate need for money for retrofitting for water and sewer. A good legislator learns where those monies are and how they can best deliver that to their community. I will say, Brian Dempsey, who I shared the city of Haverhill with for 8 years, was a master at that. Long before he became the Ways and Means Chair, he was a master at knowing where there were state funds in different pockets of money at different cabinet level secretariats and helping to bring those monies forward and help leverage those monies to help do a lot of the things that happened in downtown Haverhill with, bringing different developers in to redevelop the different shoe mills. Long before he was the Ways and Means Chair, he was a master at that. And if you're a
Absolutely.
good legislator, that's what you do. And it's not the headline-grabbing stuff, right, the occasional votes that are seen as controversial or whatever. It's really the day-to-day, learning your job, getting to know your colleagues, working with them, working with your constituents, working with your elected officials, knowing who experts are in any given field, because The truth is, people think we all magically know everything
Yep.
about everything, but realistically, we don't.
Right.
And so it's understanding where you're going to get good, unbiased information from which you can make a well-reasoned decision.
But it's getting the job done for your
Absolutely.
people and for your district.
That's
and
right.
That's what really matters.
That is what matters.
And you
It's
don't
not-
always need the newspaper story or the story on WHAV or anything like that, because I actually feel I do more that doesn't show to the public, but it shows to the individual
I
that I'm
agree.
working for. I call it constituent services because that's what it is.
Yeah.
And when you do that, and I think that's what you're made of, is that those people will remember you and they will tell their friends and relatives about who they should call and trust if they need something, and or if something needs to just be reported, and then you get it done. But putting everything on an agenda doesn't do you a whole lot of good, because also a lot of those department heads don't want to get called on something every, in my case, every Tuesday night by being pulled across the coals for a pothole or something. Just get it done. Just get
Right.
it fixed.
That's right.
And get it. And you, I have things done before the next agenda comes out a lot of times, and that's the way I'm sure you are. Is that you just know who to call,
Right.
you know your job, and you do your job. So
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll do the same thing. When you're our congressperson.
Thank you.
Yes,
You're being
I'm-
very positive.
No,
I'm
I
not
am.
going to
Well,
jinx
You have
anything.
to think positive.
You have to think positive.
I think
Yeah.
positively. I just don't want to jinx myself.
I'm not meaning to jinx you. No, I don't want to do
But,
that.
when I think of Haverhill, right, and all the wonderful things that have happened in the not so distant past, a lot of that stuff, the groundwork was laid over many, many years, right, with getting the, as I said, the shoe mills developed and bringing in Catholic Charities and bringing in, Wynn and these other folks. And then, Brian became the Ways and Means Chair and was able to tangibly bring in more money to do the boardwalk and to help with the Woolworth, the final Woolworth transformation, right, to UMass Lowell and all of that. Those things take a long time, and so that's why I think if you say I'm going to limit myself to 2 years or to 4 years, you're really doing the district a disservice. Now, I think it can be taken to the opposite extreme when you had people like Senator Byrd, who was, 90 plus and could no longer string a sentence together, but he kept the job because West Virginia wanted and needed that political clout. I mean, I think that's absurd. But I do think it takes some time to kind of build up your your connections and your knowledge
does.
base and
There's
all of
a learning
that.
curve.
That's right.
You don't want to get off just to just start to get everything. You want to.
That's right.
You want to have a little bit of time to then prosper in your position. And I
Right.
think even I'll mention Methuen. 6 years is too short.
Yeah.
Maybe
And so
it's
what
10
they
or
do
12
is-
if they feel they want a term limit. But
Yeah.
let your elected officials learn the job
Right.
and then have an opportunity to exercise what they've learned.
A lot of the folks in Methuen, from what I saw when I served Methuen, was people would go to the limit on city council and jump over to school committee, go to the limit on school committee and go back to city council. So if people really wanted to stay in service, there was a way of jumping from one to the other.
Right, right.
Obviously, they had to run and put their name on the ballot, but many folks would sort of zig and zag between one of the two major boards to stay within the letter of the law, rather
Right.
than maybe the spirit of the law as it was constructed.
But it
So-
still disrupts that learning curve and that work
Yes.
curve of
Right.
getting things done.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would say that one of the biggest assets that I can offer to people is that having been a legislator and starting in 2003, I have all those transferable skills that can bring me down to what will be a very challenging place in Washington, and already have the experience of having helped write a budget, having negotiating conference committees, having led on issues, knowing a lot of the domestic issues for sure. There'll be some changes in terms of policy and procedure, within Congress, but having already served in two large legislative bodies plus a smaller one in the school committee, I already have that skill set that can be easily transferable. But it still involves going down and learning the ins
Sure.
and outs of Congress and, sort of understanding seniority. There was a well-meaning gentleman who asked me a question at an event recently and said, when you go into Congress, are you gonna take control of the delegation and, be the spokesperson for them. And I said, well, I can't tell you what I think you want to hear, which is yes. What I need to tell you is that a lot of this is seniority based, and that if you're smart, you go in and you listen and you learn from the senior members of the Massachusetts delegation.
Sure.
And you work
Yeah.
with them.
That's
You
the
don't
way it
come in and
works.
try to blow it up.
But you'll be bringing a lot to Washington. You could become Rookie of the Year.
Well, you probably do have the most
thank you.
experience
Yeah.
out of any of the 10 candidates.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. I mean, there are folks that are touting who they've worked for, but, it's a very different situation working as a member of staff versus, actually being the person where the buck stops here.
Correct.
And you put your
Yep.
reputation on the line, and you take the hits and, and all of that. It's a very different.
That was Harry Truman, Billy.
Exactly.
Hey, we're going to take a short
Exactly.
break, but can you stick around till 7?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, great. Okay. This is the new Open Mic Show on WHAV. I'm Bill Masick, co-host Bill Ellis, and our guest until 7 o'clock tonight is Senator Barbara L'Italian, candidate for the Nikki Songa seat for the 3rd Congressional District here in Massachusetts. So we'll be right back on WHAV 97.9 FM.
Bill Masick and the new Open Mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900. If you're enjoying this program, consider becoming a WHAV member right now. Just click on the membership tab at whav.net.
Public radio for Greater Haverhill. This is 97.9 WHAV.
Catch the wave.
Hi, Tom Bergeron here. I started at WHAV in 1972. And look, WHAV's still here, but it won't be if you don't help support it. Go to whav.net. Become a contributor. Keep us going.
WHAV Open Mic.
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, 97.9 WHAV FM presents the new Open Mic Show with Bill Masick. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900.
And we are back, 97.9 FM, WHAV's Open Mic Show. And yes, that is the phone number, so dial it. If you have a question or comment for Barbara, 978-374-1900.
Barbara, if the people want to find out a little bit more about you, where would they go on the web?
Sure. So my website is www.teambarbara.com. And I can do the phone number for the headquarters if you'd like. Would you like me to do that?
Yeah. Sure.
978-409-1818. And that's, by the way, the same phone number I've had since 2002 when I first ran for the House.
Aha.
Yeah.
So that's a good
It's a
thing.
good number.
That's a good
Very
number.
good number.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do it again,
978-409-1818.
409-1818.
Yep.
1818.
I think my husband picked out the number
It's
because he was
2018.
he was in marketing and he liked numbers that were easy to remember.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can I just say one thing, the gentleman that I called earlier, and then we went quickly to break. The other piece besides the funding for infrastructure and runoff and all that throughout the Merrimack Valley, there's a gentleman named Rocky Morrison. You said you've gone on his boat. I have as well. I've gone
Yep.
out with him as he's pulled wrecks out of the water along the Merrimack, and he is always challenged with having enough money to be able to go out and do that. And, we're trying to help fund some money for him. He's physically taking objects out of the water.
Yeah.
They're oftentimes large objects like cars and things like that, and he also takes out needles and things like that.
Yeah.
But that's another thing over and above sort of the money to fix what flows into the water. It's also pulling items out that
Right,
people have
cleaning the river
carelessly
of real
dumped.
The
Why would
Yeah.
anybody want to put a car in the river anymore? Every other commercial you hear on the radio is people that will take cars for free. It just doesn't
Yeah.
make sense, and they'll give you something for it.
Sometimes they've been involved in unsavory acts.
You mean
Right.
like crime?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
no.
Stolen.
Billy, what
dumped.
happened to your car?
Haverhill actually, no, Haverhill actually has put some money in the FY19 budget for Rocky.
That's great.
Yeah,
That's
and I
fantastic.
know that they reached out to a
Thank
lot
you
of
for
the
doing that,
communities,
because
and-
they have been trying to hit all of them.
Mayor
and-
Ferrantini did
That's
come up with an
fantastic.
allocation for that purpose to just help keep the river clean.
Very good.
Yeah. Hey, we got
That's
a
great.
phone call. Let's go to a caller for Barbara L'Italian here on the Open Mic Show. Hello, caller.
Yeah, Bill, thank
Jerry.
you for having a program. This is Dr. Gerard Boucher.
Hello, doctor.
And Barbara, thank you for being on the program, and good
Thank
luck
you.
in running for Congress.
Thank you.
And I know, I believe you're a veteran. Are you a veteran?
I am not. You may be confusing me with Linda Dean Campbell, who's one of the state reps. She was a
Oh, I see.
paratrooper. My dad certainly was a World War II veteran. I have not served my country in that way.
Okay, that's all right. No,
Yeah.
You're still a good
But she
representative,
served
and
a
I
lot
would-
of years as an elected official, which she has her stripes for that, doctor.
Right.
Doctor, we commend you for your service in Vietnam.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. How do you feel about veterans' health care programs? Because Nikki Saunders, she's 100% pro-veteran. And what's your experience working with state veterans services, and what do you feel about Veterans Affairs health program?
Sure. So, for 8 years I represented the city of Haverhill. We worked very closely with the Veterans Outreach Center and trying to help them in any way we possibly could. For a period of time, I sat in on a working group trying to figure out ways in which we could get veterans to the VA hospitals more efficiently. I know there's some concern and some disagreement in the veterans world around whether or not they should be able to be treated locally at the local hospitals rather than having to go to Bedford or into Boston. I just, I feel as though we need to fully fund those veterans hospitals. Certainly if there are wait times or if there aren't specialists for what they need, we ought to be about making it as easy as possible for folks to access care. I know that there's still a lot of unresolved mental health issues among many veterans that we need to be helping, both old and young. We need to be making it easier for folks to access health care, access education if they're someone who wants to further their education. I know for my dad, who was a 17-year-old in World War II, being able to come back and take advantage of the VA benefits to go to college made the difference between a kid from a triple-decker going to college and not. So I know it was transformational for my family. So I think that, in the state of Massachusetts, we offer the most advantageous benefit package of any state in the nation, but that doesn't fully assist people, and we need to really re-energize and re-up what happens at the federal level in terms of veterans benefits. I do a veterans toiletry drive every single year throughout all of my 4 communities, and those toiletries go into a place in Lawrence that has people who are choosing between eating, heating their homes, having a roof over their head, can't afford things like toothbrushes and deodorant. And to me, that is wrong. And a lot of those folks are actually widows of veterans, too. So we need to pay attention to those people and support them as well. So I feel very strongly that we need to be about supporting our veterans in whatever ways they need us to.
Yes, well, thank you very much for that, because being treated a local hospital, because that's all part of the choice program.
Right.
On a federal level. But as far as the state is concerned, we're having a lot of problems with a lot of veterans getting services. And I was just wondering...
Which community are you in?
Haverhill.
Okay. So are they going and meeting with their veterans agent, or do you know if they're doing that?
Oh, yeah, they are. Trying, oh, yes.
Okay.
We get the Veteran Service Officer. We got, like you said, the outreach program.
Yep.
And they're very good.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you for saying you support them and you work within their system. I appreciate that. And on the federal level, because that's altogether different.
Right.
That's we have some states are having a lot of problems with their VA system, like they had in Arizona a little while back. How do you feel about that distorted system they had in Arizona, I don't know, about 2 or 3 years ago?
Yeah, I think that, again, anyone who's taken time and put their life on the line for our country deserves to have their health care needs taken care of immediately, and there should be no waiting, and there should be no cooking the books in terms of the stats on how long it's taken for someone to get service. I just think that I feel very strongly that we need to be prioritizing our veterans and not shortcutting and shortchanging them in terms of their health care needs and also their social and emotional needs as well. And so,
well, Barbara, I'll give someone else a chance to call, but thank you very much. And,
sure, my pleasure, sir.
And you have my support. I appreciate your answers.
Thank you.
And Bill, thank you too.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, thanks
Have
for
a
your
nice
call.
evening.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
All right. Well, I think there are a lot of veterans, especially the ones that haven't recently come out of service, but there are a lot of those too that are just looking for the type of service they need as they grow older.
Right.
And I know that Dr. Boucher is one of those that he's a gentleman and a scholar, but he's also a veteran that deserves to be taken care of, as all veterans do. My father was a veteran, and I grew up as a veteran's kid in a sense. I wasn't a real brat, as they call them, on a base someplace. But my dad lived it almost on a daily basis with the local AMVETs here in Haverhill, and it was very enlightening, and I felt proud to be his kid. So,
Barbara, you get a few minutes to go. What's the message you want to get to the people that are listening tonight to take to the polling, both on the 4th of September?
I think the biggest message is that I'm running for Congress. There are many wonderful people in this race. The big differentiator is that I've been working as a legislator on the ground over the last 15 years. I know the Merrimack Valley. I know Haverhill, Lawrence, Methuen, Andover. I've been working in all of those communities at one point or another over the last 15 years. Happy to partner with the local communities on economic development, on healthcare, on education, and I think that those are the things that are critically needed, as well as environmental policy. Those are really what are needed down in Washington. I can assume the job on day one with a very strong skill set that's easily transferable, continue to offer the very strong constituent services that Nikki Songas's office provides, and partner with the delegation to try to bring resources back to Massachusetts.
That's right, and I'm sure you'll do all that.
Thank you.
Okay, we're coming up on the top of the hour. Give your contact information one more time.
Sure.
That 1818 number.
Yeah, so the number is 978-409-1818 is the phone number. And the website is www.teambarbara.com.
Great.
Very
Thank you.
good.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thanks so much.
All right.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you
That's
for
good.
coming in.
Thank you very much.
Wish you luck.
Best of
Thank
luck
you.
September 4th, reminding everybody that that's the big day. You have to figure out how you can vote. If you can't get there in person that day, get your absentee ballot. I think there's still time to
They
get
should
that.
they should
There
be
is.
thinking about that now.
Yeah,
If they really
right.
have a question whether or
Right.
not they can vote,
Sure.
they should definitely take a look at the absentee
They
ballot.
can get that ballot at the clerk's office, and you might even be able to get it online now in this day and age, right?
That's very possible.
Yeah,
As
so-
we're knocking on doors, we are bringing absentee ballot applications around if people need them, and we're also bringing, people can register to vote still.
Right,
Yeah.
sure.
Well, why don't they call your number if they have a question about that? And I'm
That's
sure
great.
your folks working can
Absolutely.
assist with
My
that.
daughter Samantha, my daughter who's a teacher, that is what she's working on right now, is trying to make sure that those who feel they can't make it to the polls and need help
You'll get them
with
an
an
absentee
absentee,
ballot.
that they're able to get that.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well,
Very
we're
good.
going to call this hour finished, but
Thank you.
Barbara L'Italian will be available to you if you call her number or contact anytime you have a question or would like to speak with her. I'm sure she would gladly answer your questions. And thank you for coming in again. It's been great. This is the Open Mic Show on WHAV 97.9 FM, and we'll be right back. And we have another guest coming up next hour, so don't go away. Keep it right here at 97.9 FM.
Open Mic!
Bill Masek and the new Open Mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900. If you're enjoying this program, consider becoming a WHAV member right now. Just click on the membership tab at WHAV.net.
It's 7 o'clock.
WHAV LP Haverhill.
Here's what's happening in local news. 2 known gang members whose local criminal history dates back to the 2016 Swayze Field shooting are set for Superior Court appearances later this month after grand juries indicted them on new firearms charges. Nestor Gonzalez and Juan Marte were arrested and charged with unlawful firearm possession in November 2017 when stopped by state police in Haverhill's Railroad Square. As WHAV reported exclusively last month, 2 others arrested on identical charges have already been freed. Cases against 20-year-old Liz Marie Lozada and 22-year-old Carlos Rodriguez were dismissed. Lozada of Lawrence was riding in the front passenger seat. Rodriguez was one of the 3 in the back seat of the car driven by Gonzalez. Marte was free at the time of his most recent arrest because all defendants in the Swayze Field shooting had their cases dismissed due to lack of cooperation among the witnesses, said DA spokesperson Carrie Kimball Monahan, as she told WHAV. Marte is said to be a known gang associate of Eddie Almonte, the Haverhill man accused of murdering 20-year-old Nike Cologne in May. In the wake of Cologne's drive-by shooting death, tensions between the 2 rival groups increased, leading to what police called an all-out gang war. Cologne's alleged killer Almonte is due back in Haverhill District Court Friday for a probable cause hearing. Builders will petition Haverhill's Planning Board this week in a public hearing that discusses the potential construction of 19 single-family homes on the city's Gile and Crosby Streets. Held Wednesday at 7 p.m. in room 202 of Haverhill City Hall, the hearing comes 3 weeks after the City Council vetoed a plan for a 55-plus senior housing development on East Broadway. At the time, residents, including farm owner Don Cox, urged the city to be strategic in the development projects they pursue. I am not opposed to developments, but I am against an out-of-town developer rewriting our zoning for their benefit, said Cox. Once land is developed, it doesn't go the other way. A list of municipal meetings held this week is available at WHAV.net. 2 23-year-old Lawrence men and a Haverhill woman were arrested and charged with drug trafficking by Haverhill police on Thursday on Arch Street. Officer Dan Burrell responded to the 8 Arch Street home of 44-year-old Allison Bouchard shortly before noon and charged her with fentanyl trafficking, according to an arrest log. Lawrence's Johan Abreu and Elvi Lahara were also taken into custody and charged with fentanyl trafficking. The men also face cocaine trafficking charges and 1 count each of conspiracy to violate drug laws, said police. Congressional candidate Rufus Gifford will be in Haverhill to greet voters during a Monday night reception at the home of Democratic City Committee Chair Bill Cox from 6 to 8 p.m. Light refreshments and drinks will be served during the reception at 8 Richmond Street. The event is free of charge. To attend, please RSVP by calling 978-374-6297. Mr. Gifford, a former senior aide to President Barack Obama, is one of several Democrats vying to succeed retiring Congressperson Nikki Tsongas to represent the 3rd District, which includes Haverhill. Remember, WHAV is the only Haverhill-based news source. There's always more at WHAV.net. From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, I'm Eric Scott.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Rebecca Foster. Britain's Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson has resigned in protest of Theresa May's Brexit strategy. Rescue operations in Thailand continue as divers try to help the last members of a youth soccer team and their coach out of a flooded cave system. And British police have launched a murder inquiry after a woman died following exposure to a nerve agent.
Wave weather.
Here is the wave weather forecast for Haverhill and the Merrimack Valley. The moon and the stars will be shining brightly tonight with clear skies and lows in the middle 60s. A southwest wind around 5 miles per hour. Lots of sunshine for the day on Tuesday. Temperatures warm too, getting to around 93 degrees. Light winds. For Tuesday night, we're looking at an isolated shower or thunderstorm chance mainly late. Temperatures around 68 for the low. An isolated storm possible early Wednesday, then becoming mostly sunny. A high of 80 degrees. I'm WHAV meteorologist Brian Ivy. Your next wave weather in 30 minutes.
For more in-depth coverage of the news, visit WHAV's website at whav.net.
WHAV, Merrimack Valley, open mic.
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, 97.9 WHAV FM presents the new Open Mic Show with Bill Masek. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900.
Hour 2 of the Open Mic Show on WHAV 97.9 FM. Bill Masek and Bill Ellis here for the beginning part of this hour. We are always looking for calls for birthdays and anniversaries, and now would be your time because when we have a guest, sometimes it's tough for us to break off to that. But give us a call, 978-374-1900 if you know somebody or have a relative who is a August. Can you believe it's already August? August birthdays that we're looking for. We'll draw one of the names from the hat the last Monday of this month of July, and as the year flies by, and we'll pick out a person to receive a free birthday or anniversary cake from LBD's second generation Italian bakery. It's in Bradford Square, right on Main Street. And great place. If you haven't been there, make sure you go in and check out all of the goodies because it's not just cakes. It's a whole lot of stuff.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to surprise you one day. I'm going to go to the bakery and bring you in something. Let's be subliminal so people that are watching us will get hungry watching you, get frosting all over your face.
Then there's no calories if it's subliminal. Like, I'm just going to imagine that you brought me something.
You imagine everything. John Lennon, look how much money he made imagining.
Yes, quite a bit, yes.
He made a ton of money.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what time we were talking about earlier today when we had coffee about a group that's playing up in Hampton Beach called the Fab Four.
Yeah.
And I saw them at the Hanover Theater in Worcester, and it's phenomenal. They look like the Beatles. They sound like the Beatles. Yeah. And I tell you, these groups that, and they've done a lot of them. In this particular group, every year in Liverpool, they have a big week of Beatles festivities. And this group came from the United States. They went over there.
Beatle clone bands.
Exactly. And the second they got invited back in the second year, they basically were considered the premier band.
Where are they from?
Most of the guys were from here, but they met a fellow over there in Liverpool that looks just like George Harrison, and he sounds like George Harrison, and he's the George Harrison character.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'll tell you something. I was a little kid. And when the Beatles were coming to Boston to play the Boston Garden, and one of my classmates, she asked me if I wanted to go see the Beatles with her. And you know what I said? Nah, I'll go next time. They never came back.
Well, there was another venue they played in the Boston area.
Yeah, but not in the Garden.
They played Suffolk Downs?
Yeah, they played Suffolk Downs. But
Do you ever see...
I missed my one opportunity to really go see the Beatles live. Scarred for life. So now I will go. Anybody asks me to go to a concert, I'm there.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, let's go to Engelbert Humperdinck. He's performing. You want to go?
You know what? He'd be one of my my boxes.
Well, name a song that he sang. So you don't even know. Les Bicyclettes Belsize was one of them.
I could think of some, but you put me on the spot, and so I just kind of froze up.
You froze?
Yeah.
You make a good attorney, Bill.
Yeah. Delilah.
The
no,
Lilac?
that was Tom
that
Jones.
was Tom
That was Tom
Jones. And the Pussycat
They're
or whatever.
the same kind of singer.
Yeah, but they're not the same, though, Billy.
No, you know what? There's a song that was on the other day on I think a television program, and my wife and I couldn't figure out who it was, and I looked it up, and it was that song. So it was that song that
I mentioned.
Yeah.
And what was the name of the song?
I don't remember, but it was a.
How do you know it was the song that I mentioned?
No, but I looked it up, and it was Robert Goulet, who you was talking about.
Oh, Robert Goulet. That's the way we're up to take.
All right, let's get on. Let's talk about something serious here.
All right,
tonight.
let's talk about. There's
move
a big
on.
announcement going to be made tonight.
Oh yes, the
Supreme Court.
Somebody's looking for a job at the Supreme Court,
and I think she's going to get it.
I think she's going to get it too.
I think not. Trump's going to give her the nod.
There was a rumor this afternoon that I heard that she was on a plane heading to D.C.
Yeah, but that also rumor could have been spread too. I mean,
Could have been. Yeah,
but I think
I
think if Trump goes in that direction,
I think
the Democrats are going to have to attack a woman, and
That's
they're
right.
going to be come out and say, "Well, wait a minute, I'm trying to further."
But that's not the only reason to appoint her. I mean, just because she's a woman.
But Billy, it's
wouldn't-
politics.
It helps, but
Yeah.
but she's also very qualified.
Extremely
I hate
qualified.
the fact that they're challenging her and saying she's a member of a cult. She's a Christian. She's a Catholic.
Right.
And she goes to Catholic picnics.
I know.
Is
but
that a cult?
It's not a cult.
I,
but Billy,
I didn't know I was
look at
signing up
this-
for cults
but look
through
at
my
this
whole life
in
going
reverse,
to picnics.
though. Billy, look at this in reverse. When Jack Kennedy ran for president, on the other side attacked him for being Catholic. Because remember what they said? Oh, the Pope is going to run the country. And that certainly wasn't the case.
Well, the Democrats would probably support where the Pope stands.
Well, the Pope now, but I'm
Now,
saying
yeah,
back
no,
then.
so that wouldn't be a problem. Why would they attack her for that?
No, but the Republicans, though, attacked him for
The
being
Pope
Catholic.
is playing left field right
I'm not talking about that Pope. I'm talking about John
Our
Paul
current
VI
Pope.
or
I'm
whatever.
talking,
right.
Yeah, right.
I'm not talking about the current Pope.
I know. Yeah, no, he was the first Catholic to be
elected president.
Right.
So they attacked him on his faith.
Right.
I mean, I've never seen anybody attacked on the Methodist or Unitarian or whatever, but they attacked him because of his Catholicism. And I think that they, like you said, a cult, they're going to attack her for being a Catholic.
Right.
They're going to attack her for the Roe v. Wade. And
Well, how can you attack her for Roe v. She didn't vote on Roe
she didn't vote
v.
on it, but they're afraid that they're going to
like
try
50 years
to
ago.
reverse it. But the thing is if they reversed it in Congress or the Supreme
They
Court,
won't reverse it. They will have to rule on another case
Right,
that
that will
might
go to that.
distinguish it or might somewhat overturn that decision.
It would if it overturn it, goes back to the states.
It would right. It would require some huge case that I'm not hearing about. And somebody would have to. And it's just hard to say. Do you have your crystal ball working? Mine doesn't work.
Mine is working.
Yours is working
I
because
see
mine's
a case-
always cloudy.
The case that I see happening is your parents' retroactive abortion for you, Will.
Wow. I'm not even going to distinguish that comment.
No. But, I mean, the thing is, you really can't ask a judge to make a decision. Again, the case was heard by the Supreme Court before, and for her to make a decision on a case that hasn't been brought to her in the
She
facts.
has to look at the facts.
Exactly.
It could be a narrow decision. It could be, a little wider. But look what they just ruled on recently. There was a very narrow decision on the unions.
Unions, right,
Yeah.
the dues. What are your
And
thoughts on that?
we have a union guy coming on next.
Right.
He's coming on, matter of fact, right after we take this break, right here on WHAV 97.9 FM.
Open mic!
Bill Masek and the new Open Mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900. If you're enjoying this program, consider becoming a WHAV member right now. Just click on the membership tab at WHAV.net.
Broadcasting on the Armstrong FM system, this is 97.9 WHAV.
Catch the wave!
When the Haverhill School Committee meets, 97.9 WHAV FM is there live from Haverhill City Hall. Class sizes, special education, teacher hiring, and spending are among the topics covered Thursday nights at 7 when the school committee is in session. WHAV's live coverage is presented in part as a public service by Youth and Powerhouse, formerly Girls Inc.
Community Spotlight!
Crafts and artists wanted for Tattersall Farm Day. Tattersall Farm seeks crafters and artisans to participate in this fall's annual Farm Day coming up on Sunday, September 9th. In addition to the sale of handmade pieces, Tattersall plans farming and beekeeping demos, pony and hay rides, and live entertainment. Crafters can call Kathy at 978-374-2390 extension 11 for an application. Someone you know is on WHAV. To submit or read your own nonprofit announcements, click on the Contact tab at WHAV.net or email news@WHAV.net. In the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, this is Eric Scott.
Open mic.
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, 97.9 WHAV FM presents the new Open Mic Show with Bill Masek. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900.
And we are back on the Open Mic Show on WHAV 97.9 FM. I'm Bill Masek, and our co-host Bill Ellis is here. And now our second hour guest is here, David Kowalski. Did I say it right?
You said it
I did.
perfectly.
Yep. Okay. Now, how long have you been in? Are you from Haverhill?
I'm from Groveland, actually.
Because when I was a little kid, I used to my mother used to take me to Dr. Kowalski.
That was my Uncle Steve.
Was it?
My father was the youngest of that family. He was the baby.
Aha.
And my Uncle Steve, we used to make regular trips up to Washington Street, where his office was, up in the top of the hill, and we to visit him. We had a special knock on the door, so you knew it was relatives, and he'd come to the door.
We didn't know that knock.
Spent a few hours with us, talking with us. We revered him in the family.
Yeah,
we didn't get to see him all that often, but I got to know my uncle better when I moved up into the area, because I heard all the wonderful benefactor stories that he was such a benefactor in so many ways, not taking money for patients, leaving groceries on the doorsteps, just a wonderful human being.
He was, and that was his reputation, absolutely. And so let's move on to now. You're the union guy.
I am the union guy. I have been a union activist since I got involved with the gas company in 1974. I came to work there. I retired 2 years ago. I developed my skills when I became president of my local union, and I needed some work. I didn't know where to go to learn the skills of being a union rep and a union president.
Yeah.
And I found this place in Boston, and the name of it was called the Labor Guild.
Oh, okay.
And much like you have the sign on the door, Edward V. Johnson,
right?
I had a gentleman by the name of Father Boyle. He was a Jesuit priest, and he brought me under his wing, and they had labor courses there. Now, the Labor Guild actually goes back.
Now, I didn't know the Jesuits had a union.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. They're tight with
They have
Jesus.
their own kind of union,
They
right?
do.
Yeah.
And they were very progressive, and he was my mentor, one of my mentors. I have many there over the years, but they really taught me the ropes. And after I had graduated from college, as I was working, going to school, being union president, I went to UMass Boston with the Labor Studies program, graduated there, did some graduate work in mediation, and then I went back to the Labor Guild just to see what was happening and get involved again. And some of my favorite people were still there. Some of my mentors that taught me and brought me in were still there, and I got developing a relationship, rekindling the old relationships. And next thing you know, they wanted me to teach over there, and I said, well, what do you want me to teach? So I had no idea what I wanted to teach, and I started to think about all the education I had in labor and all the experience I had. The only thing I didn't learn is I did not have a real good understanding of where labor unions came from, how they developed, how they became so strong all week, and where we came from, our roots. So I decided to do some research, and for the next year and a half, that's what I did, research on that.
The history of the union.
Wasn't Lowell one of the creations of unions?
Lawrence was the Bread and Roses strike. That was a big one. That was in 1914. That happened, and it was not only give me roses because we deserve it, and I want bread and roses too. It was the Bread and Roses strike.
Mm-hmm.
They were a rather defiant group of women. But the history of the labor guilds goes back to about 1932 and why the Catholics got involved. And what happened in 1932 was unique. That was the passage of labor legislation, the Norris-LaGuardia Act. And it was eventually replaced in 1935 with the National Labor Relations Act. And under Roosevelt, the mantra in the country was, your president wants you to join a union. And with that taking place, there was a proliferation of labor unions starting up all over the country, but there were so many rank-and-file workers, quite like I was, they didn't know how to run a union. They didn't know the first thing about the bylaws or what an unfair labor practice was, or how to administer this new thing called labor law in practice. So it was the Catholic Church that actually stepped into that vacuum for a couple of reasons. Number one, their background, their religion is steeped in Judeo-Christian doctrine, which is basically social and economic justice, which all the major religions practice as their format, social and economic justice. But also, each person deserves dignity, human respect, and fair wage, so they can provide for their families and have a fruitful life for them and their families.
Yeah.
And that's what started it. So economically, it was everyone. All the religions started to come in. In over 200 church basements and classrooms throughout the country, the labor guilds started. And they were taught by practitioners of the field, labor union presidents, practitioners, both. Even today, we still have agency officials that come in from OSHA and the different agencies, the mediation agencies. Federal mediators retired and practicing come in on a regular basis. Attorneys, labor attorneys. We have a whole spectrum. We have an author and an attorney that comes in. There are many of them, and all practicing. The big difference in our educational process at the Labor Guild is we're not academics. We're practitioners. We're all been in the field and been doing this for myself over 30 years. And
Right.
42 years in the gas company, a good 30 of them in the union business.
Now, when you started in '75 with the gas company, was
74,
that
yeah.
74? Was that Haverhill Gas?
No, actually,
No?
it was the old Boston Gas.
Oh,
I worked out of the Beverly district down there,
yeah.
and we used to cover Lynn, Salem, Peabody, Beverly,
Yeah.
Danvers, and Gloucester. And we eventually merged with the Lynn local, and we went and covered that area, Lynn and Nahant, Swampscott, all that area. So when I started, we had 56 members in the local, and when I left, we had about 110. So that was
And there's been so many name changes and consolidations. And are they part of National Grid now?
They see what happened when I first came in. The government that was the time when the Ma Bells were being broken up.
Yeah.
They said, these utilities are too big. We have to break them up. Utilities like Bell Telephone was broken up into different groups, and they did that again when they came up with the Sprints and all of those things. They could buy into the lines, but back in the early '70s, I think it was around '72 that they told them they had to start breaking up. And the New England Electric System owned a lot of the gas companies, Mystic Valley and then North Shore Gas, where I was, and they sold their gas entities to the electric companies, sold them to Boston Gas.
Right.
And then Boston Gas was the big guy on the block in the gas industry for a while. And they prospered until, I think, 1996. We were, in the early 1994, 95, I think, deregulation started to come into view, and they started buying the Lowell Gas Company, which is Colonial, and they picked up the Essex Gas Company,
Yeah.
too, that was, I think it was privately owned at the time they bought that. And then they were all merged for a short time into Boston Gas that was soon purchased by Keyspan, if you remember that
Yes,
name.
yeah, I remember, yeah.
And then Keyspan held them for a few years, and then National Grid bought it all back together again.
You guys are on strike now, right?
Well, the not strike, lockout. I like to prefer it
Okay.
as a lockout. We saw this in 1993, and they've been locked out. Not everyone. There were a couple of thousand people in the gas side. Local up here in Lowell and in Boston and Malden, those did not accept the contract that others did. And what happened was they waited long enough and they tried long enough to try to reach an agreement. They couldn't reach one, and the company feared that there would be probably some problems out in the workplace, so they decided to lock them out.
There are some people at the large tanks up on North Avenue in Haverhill that are there every day. I'm not saying they're picketing, but there's at least
that's what they're
a
doing.
contingency.
Yeah, and I just happened to go on a street today where the contracting crew was working, and they were picketing across the street, and that's what they do. It's pretty ruthless when a family is out without health care and without a paycheck for quite some time. It does a number on you, but these people are working people. I've done it. You put your back to the weather, and you work in weather you wouldn't put your dog out in, Bill. I'm telling you, the weather conditions that we had to work in, because we wanted to keep a house on its foundation and make sure that the people in there had heat for the night.
But tell me, to be sure, and tell our listeners and viewers, what is the difference between a strike and a lockout? Is it the company locking them out, saying you won't agree to our terms, so we're just going to lock you out?
It usually gets down to that. The idea of a strike is you'll come up to a strike deadline, and then you will hold a picket line out there, and you'll close everything down. This is very similar, except the company initiates it. They fear probably some kind of sabotage, or they're fearing that something will happen to them. Slowdowns, or if they don't curtail what's going on, things are going to get worse. So rather than take the risk of damaged equipment or processes slowing down to the point where we're not effective, then they have a contingency plan to put. Usually, a lot of them are office workers, and I can't say that I've known in the 42 years any management person. I should say I knew some, but most of them were not proficient to be doing the work that they're doing out in the field. A few of them came up through the ranks, but not many of them anymore. They're hiring them out of Market Basket and Home Depot.
Wow. So it does affect people, though, when these kind of things happen, that maybe want to change their service or build a new house and connect to gas. They can't get it done, right?
Well, they may get it done. The work backup is going to be extreme because there's not many crews working.
Okay.
They do have some contracting crews working, but they're not going to be working if they've got a picket line in front of them, so that process is going to slow down. So the only alternative is to have the management people putting in there for them.
So are negotiations going on, at least trying to
I think the
to get
last
things-
I heard was that they're checking with the federal mediator to set up a date for another contract
Wow,
negotiation
okay.
session. It's a long process. I've
Yeah.
been involved in many, many of them over the years.
Yeah. Bill, what's been your experience with unions?
Well, the name that comes to mind is Eugene Debs. Now, where did he start? Like in the early 1900s? He was one of the original, I think, the
1800s,
AFL-CIO.
No, actually, Eugene Debs was one of the founders of the. You ever heard of the Wobbly movement?
What is it called?
The Wobblies?
I know the Weebles. I don't know about Wobblies.
No, actually, Gene Debs was a worked in the station for a while, and the train stations for up in Illinois for a little while. He left there when he was about 14 years old. He was a paint scraper. That's what he was, a paint scraper. And he worked. He got tired of it, and he went to work in a shop and as a clerk in a store. And thereafter, he took some interest in the union work and got involved in the locomotive union, and he rose up to treasurer and eventually president of the union, and he was a state legislature in the state legislature as well. And what happened was he became president of the union, the firemen's. I think it was a firemen and locomotives union, and he became president. And what he had done was he started a negotiation. He had a successful negotiation and strike with Northern Railways a few months before the Pullman strike started. Well, what happened in the Pullman strike was there was also a depression going on in the 1890s, and the rates were raised at the Pullman factory. I mean, Pullman was a smart guy. He didn't sell his Pullman cars. He rented them for 50 cents a fare, so he was making a ton of money. But his value in real estate prices were starting to drop. So, and he was hurting for cash, and he started raising the prices of his rents. It was a company town, and people that lived there, worked there, rented from them. So Gene Debs tried to get that dispute mediated because he didn't know it was going to be as bad as it was. But what happened was they challenged, they asked Pullman to come to a meeting, and I say they, I mean the people from the union, and they had just unionized just a few months before due to the success of Northern Railway. And what happened was he fired all the people that were at the meeting. So that infuriated the folks at the meeting, and there goes the Pullman strike, one of the bloodiest strikes in history. And he actually...
Wasn't there also a lot of deaths of steel workers being shot at by the National Guard went in, and I'm not sure who was the president at the time. I don't know if it was under Roosevelt. Grover Cleveland.
Grover Cleveland was the president, and actually the governor, Atgeld was his name, and he was furious that he didn't, he went over the head of the governor and brought federal troops in there. Only was the attorney general, and they actually placed mail in some of the mail cars so they could prosecute them under the Sherman Act for interstate commerce.
Right.
And that brought in everyone. And what happened was after that was all over, in fact, that's where Labor Day came from. Grover Cleveland was so disliked after that, he gave Sam Gompers Labor Day as a peace offering. So that's where Labor Day came from, out of that bloody strike.
Wow.
And then to go on.
That's the silver lining to the dark cloud, huh?
Yeah. And then Eugene Debs ended up in a jail cell because back then, under the omnibus portion of that Sherman Act, you were isolated from your people and you were thrown in jail. So one of the people that came to see him was a guy named Victor Berger. He was he was a congressman out of Milwaukee. And he started talking to him about socialism. And he started the Wobbly movement, which is the International Workers of the World, that actually turned pretty anarchist because the people were so abused by the industrialists that they realized the only way they were going to get fair treatment is if they took over the means of production. And that meant only by making the country, taking it over in revolution. And in fact, that's why the Norris-LaGuardia Act and Hoover signed the labor legislation, because he realized we were getting to the point where it was open warfare. The president was offering Billy Mitchell's B-1 bombers as reconnaissance to go over the watch where the coal miners were, so they could drop bombs on them.
Wow.
So, I mean, it was getting to be open warfare, and they realized there would be a revolution in this country if they didn't give any.
Well, it sounds like, compared to what we got going on today, they had bigger problems back then between the parties and what's going on between the government and people.
Well,
so it's always been turbulent, I guess.
Have you read Ron Chernow's book on Hamilton?
I have not.
I've been reading that. It's a work in progress. I've been reading it for about a year because it's about 700.
You got to quit falling asleep at night.
But it's a great book. But when you go into that and you look at all of the rhetoric that was going on at that time, and the cheap shots that were taken out at each other, and all of the pseudonames people were talking about.
Are you talking about between Adams and Jefferson?
Adam and Jefferson
Yeah.
in Washington. There was a lot going on.
Yeah.
Well, Jefferson actually cost Adams the second, in his second term.
Right.
But
Hey, we're going to take a short break right now, and we'll be right back. We're talking with David Kowalski. I have to think of my old doctor's name. And David will be giving us more education on unions and things that have happened in our country right here. And you know a lot about it, and we'll get back to it right after we take a short break on the open mic right here on WHAV 97.9 FM.
Open mic!
Bill Masek and the new open mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900. If you're enjoying this program, consider becoming a WHAV member right now. Just click on the membership tab at whav.net.
It's 7:34.
97.9 FM WHAV.
that we deliberate and achieve with wisdom and understanding, recognizing the rights of all of our citizens with full regard for the dignity and justice of the individual.
Each week, WHAV News brings you live gavel-to-gavel coverage of the Haverhill City Council. Listen to 97.9 WHAV FM each Tuesday night at 7 when the City Council is in session from the Theodore A. Pelosi Jr. City Council Chambers in City Hall. As a public service, Haverhill City Council coverage is sponsored in part by Dole, Childs, and Shaw Funeral Home.
Wave weather.
Here is the wave weather forecast for Haverhill and the Merrimack Valley. The moon and the stars will be shining brightly tonight with clear skies and lows in the middle 60s. A southwest wind around 5 miles per hour. Lots of sunshine for the day on Tuesday. Temperatures warm too, getting to around 93 degrees. Light winds. For Tuesday night, we're looking at an isolated shower or thunderstorm chance mainly late. Temperatures around 68 for the low. An isolated storm possible early Wednesday, then becoming mostly sunny. A high of 80 degrees. I'm WHAV meteorologist Brian Ivy. Your next wave weather in 30 minutes.
Catch the wave, WHAV. Open mic.
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, 97.9 WHAV FM presents the new Open Mic Show with Bill Masek. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900.
And we are back on the Open Mic Show on WHAV 97.9 FM. Bill Masek and Bill Ellis here. And also our guest is David Kowalski, and he is here from the Labor Guild. He'd like to probably go there next, right? Let's talk about the Labor Guild.
A little bit about the Labor Guild. I talked about their history, but our mission hasn't changed from 1935. That's when it really started in Boston. And we stopped for a little while after in the late 1940s. In the 1950s, we started up again. We are the oldest adult labor education school in the country. We've been in practice for 66 years. We're in our 132nd term, and we haven't changed our mission any more than we did back then. And we are the only labor guild left in the country.
And where's your headquarters?
We work out of the Archdiocese office down in Braintree at the Cardinal Center down in Braintree.
And you actually teach people from around the country?
No, mostly
from our district.
In our district, yeah. I come into programs like this to help push the labor agenda, to let them know there's somebody out there that you can go and get help from. And basically, it's rather a boot camp for new people coming in or old people that want to learn new skills. We try to teach people how to use good judgment and good order in the workplace and justice in the workplace, to work in good conscience, and to really develop people to give them the knowledge and the courage to stand up for their rights in a labor and management environment. And we haven't changed that since 1935.
Interesting. How long is the course?
The courses, they run from September 10th. We end up until November 14th. There's 2 courses in a night. I'll teach either, I think I got the early course that begins at 6:30, and the other one begins around, I think about 20 past 8 or so. I get about an hour and 10 minutes, and I talk like I do to you folks.
So it's pretty chock full of information, though.
Yeah, I have a lot to say because there's so much to do.
It's amazing what you're just saying tonight as far as history and the making of and the clashes that have occurred.
Yeah, and I bring in a lot more too, Bill. I bring in the economic pieces. I look at it through many different lenses. I give the student an overview of not this. These are our leaders, and this is what happened. But these are the battles we fought. This is the political environment we're up against. Then this is the economic environment. And you know what's interesting? When we think about the Depression, we think about the 1930s. We think about we just went through. But did you know in the 1900s there were 5 depressions? They called them panics back then, and they all had to do with a lot of the same things we do today. over-speculation in real estate, stock prices, an unstable dollar, and unstable commodity prices, either oil or cotton or wheat or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And one of the most interesting findings that I have when I was researching this course is if we don't heed these lessons of history, we're destined to repeat them. And it's true, because it cycles through. This has happened. I take my class back to when the guilds were kind of put together in Germany and France in 779, and show what has happened when capitalism is unrestricted and unrestrained in what they do. The British government allowed East India Tea in the 1600s to take over India. Basically, they had a larger army than the sitting government. They had a 250,000 man army in India and the East India Tea Company, which was twice the size of what they had in England. They tried to tone it down, but they couldn't, because there was so much investment by the parliament and the government people and the rich people that by the time they tried to annex it and filter it out and annex it into the government process, it took them until 1857 to fully integrate it into the system. And that was one of the reasons for the famine in India. They killed a third of its population because of they invaded it and tried to occupy it, and the cost of that cost them lives. And that's why the English government got involved and says, you can't do this anymore. And you see that repeated throughout history. You see it happening over and over and over again, that, the booms and busts of a business cycle that are always there. You don't see that in socialist countries as much because things are more regulated, they have a better handle on it. You saw it in Germany when the wall went down, and all of that influx from East Germany to West Germany, and all that influx of people looking for jobs, the economy, and they had a problem then. They had a problem recently when Greece couldn't maintain the euro, and they had to bail them out. But for the most part, and that was through no fault of their own. But what you see is an even keel, and there's something called co-determination in Germany, where there are people in the union that are on the executive boards of these not chairman of the board, but on the board of directors. And they did that after the war because they needed cooperation to get their market economy going again. They couldn't do it without the union. So there are alternatives, but like I say, there's nothing wrong with capitalism that a strong dose of regulation can't cure.
So who goes to these classes? Who are you teaching? Are they stewards from other unions? Are they people that want to go into that and get involved into a union?
Yes, a lot of them are looking to move up in their union. As I teach in my history class, there are obligations. Paying your union dues isn't your only obligation to a union. You have to do well in the job. You have to protect the craft. You have to honor the people you work with, protect the rules, and you know what? You have to learn. And you have to educate yourself to one day lead. People forget about that, but the old warriors like myself retire one day, and we need people to pick it up and carry it on. And that's what a lot of people are there for. There are some people there that want to move up in their union office and become president and business agents one day, and they come to us to learn the ropes and learn how it's done.
Now, I'm guessing you're not happy with the latest Supreme Court decision.
Well, I don't know who it's going to be, but I'm sure I'm not going to be happy with it.
Well, they already ruled that you don't have to pay union dues.
Oh, I thought you meant the Supreme Court Justice tonight.
No.
Oh, no, yes, that's been that's been near hysterical proportions. What's going to happen with Janice? What's going to happen with Janice? You know what? I got to be honest with you. There has not been a whole lot of preparation of what's going to happen afterwards. What are we going to do? There's been a lot of wringing of hands, but you go back to your roots. I just told you a story about the Wobblies. The reason we had change is because we rocked the boat. And I know it's not polite to be, heckling contractors outside the hole as they're digging it, or picketing out in front of someplace when people can't get by in traffic. But, I mean, it took blood in our old day, and I hope it doesn't come to that again. But, I mean, to get things to change, you need to get involved. And when you look at the Janice case, the people that organized teachers and organized the local people, they didn't have union dues check off. They had a right to organize, but the old CIO, they used to go check off. They used to go up to each and every member and say, this month. And they were proud to give it. They were proud to give it because they knew they were going to get something. So they were proud. They were proud to get something for it, and they were proud to stand together and earn that. Yeah, this is going to hurt. It could get worse as time goes on because nothing's happened yet. But I suspect if we got to get our ducks in a row and start organizing like we did in the old days.
Well, it could start problems just between the workers.
It could start, exactly. Do you ever hear the gentleman named of Tom Lynch?
I have heard that name.
Tom Lynch. I'll tell you a story. Tom Lynch came from Nevis. Tom Lynch was a cotton farmer in Nevis, and he wanted to expand his operation, so he sold his place in Nevis and moved to South Carolina. And he had a series of slaves. And when he came to South Carolina, he saw a lot of people missing arms, hands, and things like that, and they asked him, some of the other slave owners, why did you do that? He said, because this one was stealing and this one was caught running away. He said, well, what good does that do you?
Right.
He said, well, what do you do? He says, well, I have my house slaves and I have my field slaves and my stable slaves or whatever they are, and I pay do one good things for some, and I stagger them. So what happens is the house slaves are probably treated better than the field slaves. It may be treated better than the stable slaves. I don't know. But there was a pecking order, and
Right.
some were treated better than others. And in doing so, they get mad, not at the owner, not at the slave owner, but they get angry with themselves. And they get together, and there'd be a fight out in the field, and they bring him in and see Mr. Lynch and say, what's all this about? He says, well, he gets this, and he gets that, and he gets this, and it's not fair. He says, listen, I do this because this is the way I run my place. Now, I don't want any more fighting about this, and this is the way it is. Now, you all shake hands and you go away. But his secret to success was he kept an unequal balance so that there would always be turmoil between them.
Interesting.
And this is exactly what's going on today.
Going on now.
And,
Yeah.
and you can take it to the national level, to the local level, but it's all a division of labor.
Yep.
And this is one of the other things I teach in my class is once you can separate people as being something less than a whole person is when atrocities happen. You remember the few years ago when John Kerry ran for president and they were saying, well, he's a little French. He's a little different.
Yeah, yeah.
And those are the beginning signs. And you heard Trump saying the other day, a few weeks ago, that these people coming up from the South, they're animals.
No, he did say that. He said MS-13 was animals.
MS-13 was animals?
Right.
I thought he said they were...
No, he said MS-13 was
were
animals.
But once you start separating people, or different, or they don't belong here, they don't deserve the same laws, that opens up the gap for people to almost, not encourage, but almost justify the bad things they can do
To
each
rebel.
other.
Yeah. Hey, we got to take a short break. We'll be right back and talk more with David
Kowalski.
Why can't I do that? Anyway, we're here on the new open mic, and we'll be right back. But, actually, we have a phone call. Should we take the phone call first, Chris? Yeah, okay. We're going to take the phone call and see what's up. I think it's a birthday call before we take our break. Hello, caller.
Good evening, gentlemen. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, thank you. And you are correct. It is a birthday call.
Okay.
Calling to enter my mother and father into the birthday contest. They have
Okay.
August birthday.
Let's start with your name first.
My name is Mark.
Mark. Okay, Mark. And give us your mother and father are both born in August?
Yes.
All right.
Kind of nice. What
That's good.
are the dates?
What are the dates?
August 1st from my father and August 4th from my mother.
And the names are?
Mom's name is Pat, formerly Patricia,
Yeah.
and my father's name is Harry.
Okay, Pat and Harry, having birthdays next month, are now into the drawing for the The free cake, the birthday or anniversary cake, whoever wins, they'll be in the big cowboy hat we pick a name out of on the last Monday, and we will be drawing out. Could be your mother or father that wins, and then maybe you'll get a slice of cake from Albie D's, second generation Italian bakery, right in Bradford Square here in Haverhill.
Billy, why don't you wear the cowboy hat for the last 10 minutes of the show? I'd like to see that.
Well, it's got names in it already.
No, you take the names out. You'd look like Lorne Green.
And we'll be right back right after this,
Thank you, gentlemen.
this break.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
very
calling
much,
in.
caller. Bye-bye.
Right here on the Open Mic Show on WHAV 97.9 FM.
Open mic.
Bill Masek and the new Open Mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900. If you're enjoying this program, consider becoming a WHAV member right now. Just click on the membership tab at WHAV.net.
Stay informed each day with local news coupled with FSN's worldwide coverage. 97.9 WHAV is the only Haverhill-based news source. There's always more at WHAV.net.
Catch the wave.
Would it surprise you to know radio still reaches more than 90% of people in every age group every week? It's a fact. And 97.9 WHAV FM's target audience averages 92%. While other media are cutting back, area residents turn to WHAV for local news, information, and entertainment they cannot find elsewhere. Add what has been called the halo effect of public radio, and listeners find business messages more credible and trustworthy than other forms of advertising. For a no-obligation assessment about how WHAV can help your business reach more people than all other local media combined, call 978-374-1900 or visit WHAV.net.
WHAV. Open mic.
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, 97.9 WHAV FM presents the new Open Mic Show with Bill Masek. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900.
And we are back for the final turn here on the Open Mic Show on WHAV. I'm Bill Masek. My co-host is Bill Ellis and David Kowalski.
You got it.
And I got it pretty
did it
smooth
pretty
that
good.
time,
That was
right?
very
David
smooth.
Kowalski from the Union Guild is here, and he's telling some fantastic history stories and current stories, and you're just a wealth of knowledge. We could do probably 3 or 4 shows before we maybe even start to slow you down.
Oh, I'd be happy to come back.
Yeah, you will be a regular as far as I'm concerned.
Well,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Yeah. So where else would you like to converse with our listeners and viewers tonight?
Where else? Well, just to give them an update like we did of the Labor Guild, where we came from.
How could they reach you or the Labor Guild? Contact.
781
781
340 7887. Or you can just go online and hit laborguild.com, and that gives us our history. And it tells you the courses we'll be offering this fall too. I actually have a brochure on it, and we're offering, I think, about
So any
7
union
courses.
member listening
Yep.
should probably go and at least check out
Check
what you
it
do,
out.
because they could then qualify themselves to advance their position within the union.
That's what they usually, we teach steward classes. I mean, the basic steward classes teach you about the rights that protect stewards. And that's what I mean. We give people the courage and the knowledge to stand up in the work environment, which is not always easy if you have hostile supervisors and
Sure.
things. And we tell them what they can and can't do, and what the supervisors can and can't do as well. And it gives them, and hopefully it gives them the courage to stand up for their rights and the things that happened
Yeah.
to me.
How about somebody that wished that they did have a union and they don't know how to go about it?
Well, that's a simple call to the Labor Guild.
Okay.
And if there's people interested, I mean, take a look at the people in my classes. It's very diverse. I have one gentleman. He's 84 years old. Drives in from Munson, Massachusetts. He's a former bricklayer and labor education advisor for the American Federation of Teachers. He's taken my course twice so far. I've had a retired priest come in. He took my course twice. I had an exchange PhD student who was here at UMass from Uganda. He took my class. He absolutely loved it. But it's not only my class. We teach so many different diverse people. Teamsters. We teach the tea drivers, the machinists, some of the teachers. They come in even though they're educated, they may not be educated in the rule as it applies to them in the workplace.
Right, because I think a lot of people are fearful that if they started to form a union, they would get fired.
Well, they can't.
But they can't,
They
right?
can't.
That's right. The law protects them.
But they do. But they still do. So you have to be real careful in how you do that.
On how you go about it.
And who you align yourselves. And with the people we have for practitioners are very active in those areas. They do it for a living. They don't teach it. They teach it at the guild, but they practice it. Academics do research and a lot of that stuff, which is great. We need that. I needed that when I came up through the ranks. But they need to be taught also for people who have been in the trenches and who have done the work for years before.
Yeah.
So they can show them
How to go about it.
How to go about
Yeah.
it and how to do the negotiations.
Now, before I run out of time, I need to ask you, do you know where Jimmy Hoffa is?
I was going to ask that same question. Is he in Giant Stadium?
He could be. He could very well be. Yes, yeah.
Okay.
He's quite a character, wasn't he?
Yeah, that was quite a
He did what he
time.
needed to do at the time because there was no one else there. The mob, as bad as they were, got his people what they needed when they needed it. That didn't make it right, but he didn't have a lot of alternatives.
Yeah. There was another turmoil, tumultuous type day.
Oh,
period.
absolutely. Yes, we had a lot of that.
Yeah.
And then the red baiting in between, there was a lot of
Yeah,
that.
it has been enlightening hearing your stories that, we're just going through regular times pretty much. Different, but what's going on in our government and in our country is
very
just,
similar.
just another chapter.
You know what I find is, when I look at the old pictures, and I have a PowerPoint presentation that I do in my classes, and I'll go back and I'll look at history the way it was, and the dress has changed, the times have changed, and maybe the tactics have changed. They're not as violent as they were, but they're still there. They're still using the same strategies as they did back then.
Yeah, my wife and I like watching the CNN programs like for the 70s and the 80s, and you see the same type of street type crowds and picketing and not for unions, but just for a cause.
Yeah, for a cause.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where movements come from.
Right.
And I look at these kids coming from Marjorie Douglas Stone. Douglas was it Stone? And I look at the caliber of those kids coming out of there, and they're starting a movement. It's one thing to get out there and picket, but when the clergy and the people to that magnitude start to get involved, that's when a movement starts. And I think they're going to have a very hard time to discredit those young kids as being, outside agitators.
Yeah, you can feel the wave kind of getting larger.
The spirit of history is in the air.
Yeah, and they're getting together with their thoughts and ideals.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, we got a few minutes left. Anything else you want to bring us up to speed on, or let us know?
Well, classes begin September 10th.
Okay.
And we hope to see some people from this area down there. Now, look, I live in Groveland, and I travel down to Braintree to teach these courses every week. So if I can come down to teach, go down there, I'd love to see some of the students from the Haverhill area come down. And, man, you got a rich history of the Boot and Shoes Union up here.
Yeah.
I did a research paper, and I researched some of the old Social Democrat newspapers and found that this was the place for the first socialist mayor in the country came from Haverhill.
No
His
kidding.
name was John Chase.
John
Chase, and I think it was around 1895.
I wonder if he was related to Paul Chase, who we had on the council and the mayor, and
there was a gentleman by the
his
name
family
of,
was active in Hayes, still active. And Mary Carrington was a Chase, our HR director for many times.
They could be.
She was always in the union.
Carey, he was here. He held a few terms, and there was a gentleman here by the name of Louis T. Skates, who was a state legislator for a couple of terms here, and he came. I think he came out of predominantly Republican district, if I'm not mistaken, when I looked at the results. But the interesting part about I actually looked him up and asked one of his relatives, found one of his relatives, and he knew all about his boot and shoe workers background. He didn't know he was a state legislator because of all the red baiting that.
No kidding.
So are you pro-socialist?
Am I pro-social? I was a Republican growing up for the most part. They were crazy for me, and I'm more of a Bernie Sanders social democrat now, and I haven't really changed my position that much.
God bless you.
Well,
I'm just the
we
opposite.
can't get into that very much
No,
because we're less than a minute away
40
from the
seconds,
top of the hour. So, this is the open mic show. We're here every Monday night till 8. Usually myself, Bill Masick, and my co-host Bill Ellis. We sit in and carry on various discussions, and right now we've been with David Kowalski for this hour, and very informative. David, I want to thank you for coming in.
It was a pleasure to meet
I
you,
want to
Bill.
have you.
Bill, thank you, David.
Make sure we'll keep you on the road.
I would love it.
We can have anytime you have something you need to talk about on the airways. Make sure you let us know, and if not, give me a little poke in the ribs, going, "Hey, Bill, I haven't been on for 6 months. Let's talk again."
I'll be here at least every 6 months because we do have 2 semesters in a year, and I can do that.
We'll do that. All right, let's make sure. And that's going to wrap it up for us tonight on the Open Mic Show on WHAV 97.9 FM.
Open mic.
Join Bill Masick live on the new Open Mic again next Monday night at 6. The opinions expressed on the Open Mic Show are not necessarily those of 97.9 WHAV FM, its underwriters, or affiliated stations. The Open Mic Show came to you from the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom.
It's 8:01.